I'm 103 years old, and I want to tell you about the biggest mistake of my life, a mistake that cost me 46 years. I married a woman I didn't love, not because I was cruel, not because she was a bad person, but because I was terrified. Terrified of what people would think, terrified of being alone with no children, terrified of disappointing my parents. And at 70 years old, I finally got divorced. People thought I was crazy. At your age, just stay comfortable. But here's what no one tells you. Comfort can be the most expensive thing you'll ever buy. If you're watching this and you're living a life designed by other people's opinions, this is your warning. I met Margaret when I was 23 years old, 1946. Just after the war ended. She worked at the hospital as a nurse, came from a good family. Her father was a doctor. Her mother volunteered at the church. My parents, they loved her before I even had a chance to figure out if I did. She's perfect for you, my mother would say. Educated, respectable. She'll give you a family, a legacy. And there was another girl. Her name was Elena. She worked at the bookstore downtown. She had paint under her fingernails, and she laughed like she didn't care who was listening. We'd talk for hours about books and traveling to places we'd only seen in magazines. Greece, Morocco. But Elena didn't want children. She wanted adventure. She wanted to paint and write and live in tiny apartments in foreign cities. And Elena didn't come from money. She didn't have a career that impressed anyone. My father called her that bohemian girl, like it was a disease. You want to end up broke and alone? He'd ask me. No children, no legacy, just chasing pipe dreams with a girl who doesn't even want a real family? That's what terrified me most. Being 70 years old with no children, no grandchildren, just money in the bank and an empty house. I was young and scared, and I couldn't see past the horizon of what my parents thought was right. So I chose safety. I chose reputation. I chose the promise of family. I chose Margaret. We got married in 1947. I was 24 years old. She wore white. Everyone said we looked perfect together, and maybe we did, from the outside. But I knew the truth that very first night. When we stood in that hotel room after the reception, I looked at her and felt nothing. No electricity, no pull, just obligation. I told myself it would grow. Love was supposed to grow, right? People said marriage was work. People said romance fades anyway. People said we'd build a beautiful family together, and that would be enough. But the children never came. Year after year after year. Doctors, tests, treatments, nothing worked. And suddenly I was 40 years old, in a loveless marriage with no children, living exactly the life I was trying to avoid. Except I'd also given up the one person who actually made me feel alive. Let me tell you what 46 years of living a lie actually looks like. It's sitting at the dinner table with someone you've known for decades and having absolutely nothing to say. It's the sound of silverware scraping plates, the hum of the refrigerator, the absence of laughter. It's watching couples hold hands in the park when you're 65 years old and realizing you haven't touched your wife with affection in 20 years. It's looking at the empty bedroom that was supposed to be a nursery and knowing you sacrificed your happiness for children who never existed. I remember being 47 at a friend's son's wedding. I watched the groom look at his bride the way I used to look at Elena. That spark, that gravitational pull. And I excused myself, went to the bathroom, and cried like a child, because I knew what I'd given up. I knew I'd traded one moment of courage for a lifetime of emptiness. I went to work every day, built a successful career, made good money, more money than I knew what to do with, came home to a wife who was a stranger, had dinner, watched television, went to bed, repeat, 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 for 46 years. People envied us. Such a stable marriage, they'd say. You two have really made it work. And I'd smile, because that's what you do when you're living inside a cage you built yourself. Do you know what the real tragedy is? It wasn't that Margaret was terrible. She wasn't. She was kind, responsible, everything my parents wanted. The tragedy was that we were both pretending. She knew, of course she knew, but we'd made a commitment. We had a reputation to uphold. We couldn't just throw away a marriage because we felt empty. So we both just endured. I'd see Elena sometimes over the years, in town, at the grocery store, once at a funeral. She married a musician. They lived in a small house by the coast. Never had much money from what I heard. Never had children either, but they had each other. When I saw them together, even in their 60s, the way they looked at each other, that should have been my life. Instead, I got a big house, a nice car, respect in the community, a bank account full of money I didn't even want in the first place, and a black hole where my heart should have been. By the time I hit my mid-60s, something in me started breaking. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning with this weight on my chest. This voice asking, "Is this it? Is this really all there is?" My body was getting older. Time was running out. And I'd spent almost 5 decades living someone else's idea of what my life should be. For what? For children who never came? For parents who were already dead? For people who weren't even thinking about me? I was 68 years old when something inside me finally snapped. It wasn't dramatic. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in my office looking at my bank statements. All this money, all this security, and I thought, what was it all for? I'd given up love for the promise of family, but there was no family. I'd given up passion for financial security, but I never even wanted the money. I'd given up my actual life for a life that never happened. When I got home that evening, I sat Margaret down. We'd been married 44 years at that point, and I said the thing we'd both known forever, but never said out loud. I don't think we should do this anymore. She didn't cry, she just nodded, like she'd been waiting for me to say it for decades. We spent 2 more years trying to work on it, because that's what you do, right? Therapy, talking, trying to manufacture something that was never there in the first place. But you can't build a fire from ashes. You can't create passion out of obligation. So at 70 years old, I filed for divorce. People thought I'd lost my mind. Friends were angry. After all this time, you're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing Margaret. What will people think? What will people think? The same question that got me into this mess. But here's what I realized. I'd already wasted 46 years worrying about what people think. I wasn't going to waste whatever time I had left. I'm 103 now, 33 years since that divorce, and these have been the best years of my life. I didn't remarry. I didn't need to. I finally learned how to be alone without being lonely. I traveled. I read. I wrote. I spent time doing things that actually mattered to me. I stopped performing. I reconnected with old friends, made new ones, had conversations that actually meant something. And yes, I reached out to Elena. She'd been widowed by then. We met for coffee. And you know what? The spark was still there. After 50 years, we spent her final 5 years as companions. Not married, not obligated, just present. She passed 3 years ago, and I mourned her properly, the way you mourn someone you actually loved. So let me tell you what I learned. Listen carefully, because you don't have as much time as you think. Stop living for your parents' approval. They mean well, but it's not their life, it's yours, and when they're gone, you'll still be stuck in the decisions you made to please them. Stop making life choices based on fear. I was terrified of being childless and alone, so I married someone I didn't love to avoid that fate. And you know what? I ended up childless anyway, and lonelier than I ever would have been on my own. Stop chasing things you don't actually want. I built wealth I never cared about. I maintained a reputation that meant nothing. I sacrificed my joy for security I didn't need. What are you chasing that you don't even want? Stop worrying about what people think. Those people aren't living your life. They're not waking up in your bed. They're not sitting at your dinner table. They're not dying with your regrets. Their opinions are not worth your joy.
Take the risk. I know it's scary. I know the safe path looks better from the outside, but safety is expensive, and you pay for it with your actual life. If this story hit you in the chest, I need you to do something for me. Leave a comment. Tell me what decision you've been avoiding. What life are you living for someone else? You don't have to use your real name. Just get it out. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. They might not thank you today, but they will someday. Hit that subscribe button, because I'm not done talking yet, and neither are you. Don't wait.